I am Grace Ames. I am the Communications and Membership Coordinator Manager here at Missouri Organic Association. For anyone who's not familiar with MOA, we have been around since 1993 as a 501(c)(3) membership organization, really geared towards providing resources and education to farmers in the organic, regenerative, sustainable, and ecological fields. And this series of webinars that we are calling the Farmgate Journal is a new extension of that. And so we are joined today by Dave Campbell of Lily Lake Organic Farm. We will be doing these monthly, typically on the third Tuesday of the month at 1 p.m. Occasionally those will move. So we've got a few great speakers and presenters joining us for the rest of the year. And we will be recording this session, so just to know that everything is recorded. And we will be going over a presentation that Dave has prepared for us. Once this is recorded, within the next week, I will get it live on our YouTube site and share it, or share a link to it on our website and through our emails. And all of that said, that is the main point that I need to cover. Because this is a presentation style event, if there are questions along the way, please use the chat in the bottom of your screen to ask those. And I'll be keeping track of those as Dave presents. Please keep yourselves muted till the end. At the end of the presentation, I'll allow everyone to unmute themselves and ask any questions, any burning questions that they have, and we'll be going over some upcoming events that MOA is hosting. So Dave has been organically farming for certified over 30 years, correct?
Correct.
All right. So in that time, he has made all of the mistakes and learned all of the lessons, and he's going to bring everything he's got to us, and take it away. So Dave, go ahead, and I will pull up your PowerPoint and we'll share from there. If you want to do just a quick introduction on yourself.
Okay, Dave Campbell. Dad switched over to organics in '67 when I was 12. We sold health food store, meat products, and so forth. Went away to college, Western Illinois University, which is close to you guys, and decided not to teach and came back to the farm. And so, dairy farmer for a few years in Illinois and Wisconsin, and organic grain since 1988 when we went cold turkey. We switched the entire farm over to certified organic production. We were certified in 90, and part-time jobs along the way. But I'm currently working for Rodale Institute as a consultant, as well as farming a small parcel. I run it out majority of the farm to another organic grain farmer. I'm located in northern Illinois, kind of northeast Illinois, about 40 miles from the Wisconsin border, between Rockford and Chicago. Okay, and yeah, Grace had mentioned in the chat, once in a while it might be good to take a chat question, Grace, just because I don't want to lose my voice. So
Perfect.
we'll see how that goes. But anyway, okay, next slide. Okay, I just listed some weeds here. I'm sure probably all of you here are familiar with most of these weeds. Basically, velvet weed, lamb's quarters, pigweed, Jimson weed are the worst weeds. Broadleaf weeds, foxtail is, of course, pretty prevalent. Giant ragweed, which I don't have on my farm, but it's out there and it's getting worse. And nightshade can be a bad one too. So these are annual weeds. They'll die off within the first year. Pennycress and shepherd's purse are weeds that actually will span 2 calendar years, but they're only around for about less than 12 months. They're a winter annual. They'll germinate like in the fall. They'll hang around, and they'll be the weed that you'll see in your oats or your wheat in the springtime. It looks terrible, but eventually it's usually not much of a problem. Okay, next slide. Okay, next we have the perennial weeds. These, of course, survive the winter. The big issue with these is they're like a strawberry plant. You've got the rhizomes in that, which like to spread. And field bindweed is morning glory is getting worse in my area. Johnson grass, not too much, but sow thistle is not a huge issue, but it's getting worse, especially in the road ditches. Canada thistle is, of course, the big one. And hopefully I'll have time to talk about Canada thistle. I've done PowerPoint presentations on this perennial weed. It's really getting to be a big issue all around the country, actually. So hopefully have time to talk about that. Okay, next. Okay, we're talking about methodologies here for weed management. The first thing that normally comes to our mind is mechanical tillage practices, but there's a whole lot more to it than that. So why not address all these issues? There's more to it than just steel in the field, so to speak, which is obviously important and needs to be done. But we can look at other aspects too to try to control our weeds. Okay, next. Okay, I've got a chart here. My soil test goes back a few years. And I'm not really going to go into detail on this here, but I basically want to point out a lot of farmers who are organic or working towards organic and that regenerative even will work through Midwest labs, and there's other groups too, organizations or companies that will soil test. Anyway, this one's pretty common, based out of Omaha area, I think. And what I want to point out here is just one thing, and that would be the calcium-magnesium ratios. And if you can, now the university system does not necessarily support this so-called theory, but pretty much all organic farmers will embrace the calcium-magnesium ratios, trying to get those in balance. It takes time. Don't worry about it if you aren't there, but it does take time. You can use high calcium lime for pHs that are 6.5 or below. Gypsum, there's a fair amount of gypsum out in Iowa. I'm not sure about Missouri. That's usually used for pHs that are above 6.5. Both really good products will both help the calcium levels. You really want to get the magnesium levels down because high magnesium, which happens with conventional farming at times, it'll tighten your soil. It'll be hard to work your soil, hard to cultivate, and it causes more weeds. Okay, next. Okay, we'll discuss mechanical tillage practices first. Next. Okay, I've listed some methods here. Maybe there's one I forgot, but we start out with rotary hoeing. That's done as soon as the crop is planted, maybe 3 or 4 days or so later. That's first pass is usually a blind pass before the weeds are actually, I'm sorry, before the crop actually emerges. Tine weeding is something that has gotten much more popular in the last 10, maybe 15 years. Personally, I don't have a tine weeder, but a lot of the farmers, especially the bigger ones, maybe have a little deeper pocketbook, might use a tine weeder, but they are good tools. They're more aggressive, and that's usually done as the plant gets a little bit taller. They can handle a little more aggressive weeding methods. Then, of course, we have the row crop cultivating. Flame weeding, I've never done, but a lot of farmers will do flame weeding. Weed zapping, as you know, has become more popular, especially on those giant ragweeds, velvet weeds too. Any weed that's above the plant. Some weeds better than others. And then one thing here that you may not be familiar with, I'm 70, so I'm kind of going back quite a ways here, but there was a time when farmers would hook up a sickle mower, with a pump attached to their tractor. And that would actually, there's a time of year in our area here about 10 days ago when the boxtail all of a sudden shoots ahead and it gets about a foot or so above the soybeans, when they would use that, assuming they've got narrow tires in their tractor, They can use that to clip off some of the boxtail seed heads. And then, of course, hand weeding, which I'm doing now, and most farmers are still working on up my way. Okay, next. Okay, just got a few tips here on weed control for small grains. If you're talking whenever, whether it's winter wheat or oats or spring wheat, you want to get that small crop in as soon as possible. Of course, with the Hessian fly date, your extension office or somebody would know that what your date is on that. You want to probably wait till after that date, but I'm not sure how much difference that actually makes. The sooner you get it in, the better germination you're going to have, and you're just going to have more crop out there and less bare spots, which means less weeds. Seeding rates, we typically would recommend going a little higher than conventional farmers. They're going to, it kind of depends upon the crop, but remember, you've got to deal with the weeds, so you might want to go a little higher on your seeding rates. Spring tillage, again, you want to, depends on your soil type. I'm in an area we've got a lot of clay loam, and so I've got to be really careful in the springtime. And you want to stay shallow if you can, unless it's drier. Maybe you can go deeper, but you don't want to work wet soils. And we all kind of know that, but just a reminder. And then the last point here, use clean seed only. I had an experience once many years ago. I had grown a crop called spelt. It's out there. You don't see it too much anymore. This was probably back around maybe 91 or 2. I had bought some seed and came some tote bags, and it had more than a little Canada thistle in it. And it was getting late, and I decided to take a chance. And guess what? I had Canada thistle on my farm. I mean, there's always some anyway around the Midwest, especially as you get further north. But anyway, I just, I guess don't feel bad maybe turning someone down. I mean, it's going on your farm and it'll be there forever if you get some dirty seed. Next. Okay, now we're talking about corn and soybeans and weed control. Again, it's so important with corn and bean crops to wait till your soils warm up. That may mean going with a shorter maturity, more so with your corn. You just don't want to plant into cold soils or wet soils. Like this spring, we were dry, but our ground was very cold due to a cold winter and very little snow cover. The second point here, don't plant before a heavy rain is forecast unless it's getting late. Okay, obviously, if it's getting late, you just got to roll the dice and take a chance. I had a little story here to tell. Many years ago, I was planting a bean field, soybeans. I only had about 3 rounds to go, and it was getting dark. And nowadays, I would just finish. I mean, I've got lights, I'll just finish it. But back then, I decided not to. And what happened was, instead of a half-inch rain, they had forecasted we had a little over 3 inches. So I couldn't get back in for another 6, maybe 7 days. And the majority of that field, that was in I think it was my last transition year, my first organic year, probably around 90, 91. And what had happened was lots and lots of weeds. So I made a couple of mistakes there. But the last 3 rounds I did was done a week, actually, probably more like 10 days later. Those 3 rounds were very clean. And the rest of the field, I left it, and I really should have gotten the mower out there and chopped it off and either replanted beans or planted a crop like buckwheat, which you could be planted later. So anyway, we all make those mistakes. It just happens. But again, you just never know. I mean, it wasn't forecasting heavy rain, but it happened. So watch that forecast close and realize that the forecast could be wrong. Okay, next. Okay, organic farmers, we tend to plant beans. The conventional farmers are probably going to plant about approximately 8 seeds per foot. I like to plant 11 or 12. The last few years I've gone 12. We're going to rotary hoe or tine weed aggressively. And, if we got a bean there, I probably got less weeds. So that's something that organic farmers like to do, and that's your call. It depends upon how aggressive you want to be with your hoe and your tine weeder. And then this may seem pretty obvious, but I know, when you've got kids in school, you've got a kind of a short vacation window there of June, July, and the first half of August. Maybe that June vacation needs to wait if you're got some hoeing and tine weeding to do, probably more so than cultivating. But hoeing and tine weed is very time sensitive. As I said here, timing is everything. Next. My field cultivator, I've got two of these. I've got older, smaller equipment. International 45. I've got 10-inch sweeps on there. They're probably worn down to about 9 maybe. I use that with a drag harrow behind. Okay, next. Minor field cultivator, the same, a 45. Those they call them double points. You can buy them from shoot manufacturing. They're really pretty reasonable. You can use both ends of the point. They're about 2 or so inches wide. I like them really a lot for like quackgrass or thistles. But I also like them for the fact that I've got less, uh, I guess I would say, iron to soil contact versus those wide sweeps. And so, and my theory is that if I can get the weeds controlled with speed and with my drag harrow behind, I'd rather lift the soil more so than run over it with wide sweeps. But again, depends on your soil type, and I can't say one's better than the other. Most everyone uses the wide sweeps, and they're fine too. It's just what I prefer. Okay, next. Mention the drag harrow. Okay, that's one section there. I've got my if I use my if I put my wings up in the air, I'll use a 3-section drag. If the wings are down, which means I can go a little wider, I've got a 4-section drag. And yes, it is work unloading off the wagon and so forth. But those older Lindsay or Pepin drag harrows, they're reasonable and they do a really good job of breaking up the lumps in the soil. Okay, next. Tandem disc. A disc is a compaction tool. I don't recommend using it all the time, but again, there's times if you mow or plow, none of us do that much anymore, but I will on occasion in the springtime. Then you'll need something like a disc to kind of firm the soil a little bit. Mostly I use it like planting a cover crop after ultra wheat harvest, or in the fall, maybe to disc up, cut up some corn stalks or something. So a disc is used at times. Okay, next. Okay, something we maybe can overlook, the adjustment of planter wheels. This may not be a big issue, but if you're planting and say it's just a little bit more damp or wet than what you like, but you want to get the crop in, look at those adjustment of your press wheels. If you're going to adjust those really tight with soils that are a little wet or tight, you're going to be compacting more weeds right into the row that you plant into. So look at your adjustment of your planter wheels. Dry conditions, you can obviously adjust it tighter. Again, probably not a big difference, but every little thing that you can do to minimize weeds is a real plus. Okay, next. Okay, so we're down to rotary hoeing now. As far as tractor speed goes, there again, it just quite variable. You need to really spend time seeing what works best for you, because I can tell you one thing: I like to hoe in that 8 to 10 mile an hour range, but I have gone as fast as 14 miles an hour and maybe as slow as 6. Every time you enter a new field, there'll be a different soil type, maybe a different amount of residue, depends upon what was there before. But you want to adjust that tractor speed, and sometimes it's really hard to tell, but do what you can to help with that. First hoeing, you notice here I say 3 to 4 days. Typically I go 4 days, but if it's really warm and the rain's coming in, I actually might do it the second day if the rain's coming in. And you notice here I mentioned the last tillage pass. Let's say you till that field on Monday and you plant on Tuesday. Well, the weeds don't start growing on Tuesday after you plant, they start growing on Monday. So I suggest that tillage pass is done maybe a day before instead of right in front of your planter. You've got to kind of take that into account. Then the second hoeing is almost always when that crop emerges. I've got to have something to a crop there to kind of, I don't have a guidance system. And usually for corn, as soon as it spikes, if you get to the second or third leaf stage, you can do some damage to the corn, especially on heavier clay loam soils. Again, that's just going to depend upon your situation. Uh, Sometimes people do a third hoeing, or maybe that third hoeing will be replaced with a tine weeding. So again, go out and try it and see what works. And if you don't do too much damage, I say go for it. Or maybe do a few acres. The first, if you look behind you, you might say, I'm not going to do this. 3 or 4 days later, you might say, I wish I would have done the whole field. So again, I know probably a lot of you here have already have experience with that, but if not, or if you want to fine tune your weeding practices, you want to think about that. Okay, next. Okay, that's my rotary hoe. You'll notice that some wheels are off the left side as the right side as well too. That's an old John Deere 400 hoe. They're very common. They're getting pretty old nowadays, but since I'm on 4 row 36-inch rows, that's a 15-foot toolbar. It's set up for 6 row 30-inch, and so I've got to take the outside wheels off both sides. If I don't, I end up hoeing rows 1 and 4 twice and rows 2 and 3 once. And so that's why you see some wheels missing there. Okay, next. Okay, that's my hoe. You'll notice the wheel there on the far left. Some of you may have used something called hoe bits. They were pretty popular a long time ago. And you'll notice they weld onto the existing spoon on the whole wheel. You'll notice they're bigger than the bits on the right there, center and right. Those are pretty aggressive. And so what I've done with my hoe is I've gotten to the point with the use of cover crops and of course, good soil health is that my soil works up a whole lot better than what it used to. And so anymore, those hole bits are pretty aggressive, especially if I'm in a cornfield where it's been red clover the year before. It's pretty hard on the corn. So what I do is I buy new wheels from Shoot Manufacturing. John Deere will sell them too. And spoons are a little bit smaller. It's not quite as aggressive, but they do a good job. And so what I'll do is I'll put those new wheels over my rows so that the rows get not quite as much aggressive action, and the area between the rows, who cares? That's going to get cultivated anyway. So I use the spoons over those rows. Okay, next. Okay, this is a field that I just rotary hoe. Typically, at the cotyledon stage, you don't want to rotary hoe. You'll see I picked up or pulled out a soybean plant there. Again, you're going to have some loss. You need to have some loss. If you don't have loss, you're probably going to have more weeds. Now, that said, this year, for the first time in many years, I actually hoed at about that stage. I was nervous, but you know what? You just never know. You go out and try it, and I had very little loss. Maybe 5% at most is the loss I had, even less than that probably. So I went ahead and hoed, and but my point here is that you can try hoeing them. It's not really a good time to hoe. Usually you hoe before you see emergence, VE stage, and then again probably about maybe 2 days or so after those cotyledons have emerged and you got a leaf there. That's usually about a good time to hoe. But again, see what works on your soils. Okay, next. Okay, when we talk about rotary hoeing and tine weeding too, we'll get those weeds, what we call the white root stage. You'll notice two of those weeds there are in that white root stage. The third one there in the bottom is probably a few hours beyond that. And that is the stage when they're very fragile. The rotary hoe will pick them out pretty easily at that stage. But once you get to the bottom one there, beyond the bottom one, that's probably going to take a tine weeder to get that weed out. So again, the hoe typically people hoe later than what they think they should. Again, that third or fourth day, maybe the fifth day, but probably more like third or fourth day. And then again, 3 or 4 days later, you want to be out there, and if it's going to rain, get out there sooner. Okay, next. Okay, a picture I got offline of a tine weeder. Looks like an Einbach. I'm not sure. Uh, More and more of those are being used. This here is being used, it looks like, in a winter wheat field or possibly spring wheat. You can use them in grain crops, small grains, oats, wheat, whatever, and of course corn and beans too. But they're going to be more popular. So it's just another tool in the toolbox. Next. Okay, so here's kind of what I use on row crop cultivating, which is next. I've got a heavy duty Buffalo 3-point cultivator. In my area, Buffalo is really pretty popular. Although a few guys have gone to some of the Einbachs with the camera guidance systems and other cultivators, but Buffalo is still, we've got a dealer nearby, and they're really good cultivators. It's a heavy duty cultivator. I have to usually figure about 20 horsepower per row, maybe a little more than that with a bigger 16 row cultivator. We do have someone nearby that's got a 24 row cultivator. I cultivate usually twice, maybe 3 times if the timing is right. I like disc killers. We'll see a picture coming up with disc killers attached. And I got something called a cultivation mirror. I used to use a Scout guidance system from Buffalo, but the problem is the first time through, those corn and bean plants are probably going to be about 3 or 4 inches tall. And the wands, which you use to center your inside 2 rows, it tends to bounce around with the clods of dirt. And I don't have much for clods, but nonetheless, it would jump off the row sometimes. And so I've got what they call a cultivation mirror for the first time. Years ago, I would use the Scout guidance for the second pass through. Now I don't. But the third time, there's really no need to use that because by then I've got everything set way apart on the cultivator. And so I'm just kind of lining up my tractor hood ornament with the center of the row, and I'm just fine. At that point, I'm more so just throwing dirt in the row. Okay, next. There's my cultivation mirror. Some people have a hard time really kind of getting the hang of it, but most people have no problem after a few minutes. That's mounted, as you can see, on my tractor frame. And you look in the mirror, and I sometimes will set that roll number 3 a little tighter so I have a little more peace of mind on rolls 1, 2, and 4, or you got a 16 row, it doesn't matter. So I've got that set. I can look in the mirror, and I can see what's going on behind me in that row, and I should be fine in my other rows, assuming I've adjusted the cultivator right. Okay, next. Okay, there's my disc killers. First time through, I usually set those so I'm cutting about 2.5 to 3 inches from the center of the row. So I've got a gap there of about maybe 6 inches. And again, I like to try to get as close as I can. If I cultivate sooner, I could probably set them a little bit closer. I probably should have done that this year. But nonetheless, that's about where I usually set those disc killers. I really like them. It slices away the dirt away from the row, and then you've got that loose dirt and so forth. The sweeps are going to take out behind the cultivator. Okay, next. Okay, yeah, okay. I wanted to show this picture. You'll see the wrenches there, breaker bars, wrenches, so on and so forth. My point here is that the time spent adjusting that cultivator, and I know it's frustrating because maybe you're behind, you've had some rain, it takes time to adjust that cultivator, and I wouldn't want to adjust the 16 or 24 row or even a 12 row for that matter. But again, you've got to do it. But the tighter you can set that cultivator and the time it takes to set it is going to mean a whole lot well, a few less weeds anyway, maybe a lot less weeds. And when you're hiring help at 20 or 25 bucks an hour to weed your beans, that little extra time spent, maybe an extra hour or two on your cultivator each time you cultivate, is going to make a big difference. So that's just my point there is don't be afraid to take some time to take the wrenches out there and adjust that cultivator as tight as you can. Okay, next. Okay, a situation here. This is either an 18 or 19 a few years ago where we had 52 and 54 inches of rain that year, or total precip with snow melt. A lot of rain. That was my first pass through. The corn is in that probably 12 to 14-inch range there. You can see weeds coming, but you have to do what you have to do. What I want to emphasize here is that using cover crops over the years and good soil health has really loosened up the soil. I've got good soil flocculation there. And so I can do a little better job of cultivating with soil like that versus hard and compacted soil like I had in my first few years I was here. Okay, next slide. Okay, same thing. I was out there, and you can see with that loose, friable soil there that I'm able to throw that dirt around the base of the corn plant really well. And the more I can do that without hurting the plant, the more weeds I'm going to get. Okay, next. Okay, here what I've got, you'll notice that voxtail there right next to my, I've got 7 grass waterways on my farm. Um, you'll see the foxtail. Okay, what that's primarily from rotary hoeing, a little bit cultivating. So why is that there? Well, I don't like to run my rotary hoe in that waterway, and I've got some speed, and I've got to slow down, and so my hoe gets picked up, and on the other side of the waterway, put back down. You can see anywhere from about maybe 2 feet to 6 feet in front or behind, and so I'm going to have some weeds there. I could maybe go around that waterway and try to hold that out to get more weeds, but I don't want to get I don't want to get a washout started. So I just sacrifice that, and that's why that foxtail is there. I just lift up the hoe, and fortunately that year I had with beans were planted late due to wet weather, and I had pretty good luck with weed control. Okay, next. Okay, that's a grain cleaner I bought on an auction for 600 bucks. I've got another one. That one I use for corn. Another one I use for beans. I like to run everything through a cleaner. I usually don't have too many weeds, but nonetheless, I don't want to be putting weed seeds in the bin and having a hot spot develop in the core of the bin. So to me, larger farmers are probably not going to do that, or if they do that, they've got a very sophisticated setup where, in fact, I know of some farmers nearby to me that have around 4,000 acres, and they've got a really specialty type of grain cleaner that operates a whole lot faster than something like what I've got. And so, good farmers, excellent farmers, actually, and they've got the grain cleaner that's expensive, but for their acres and that, they've got to have something that's going to do the job quickly. Okay, next. Okay, some of you probably have this book. It's been out for many years. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with the SARA organization, Sustainable Ag Research. You've got there in northern or in Missouri, you've got the SARA organization there in every state that the land grants. Steel in the Field, that's a really good book. It's got a lot of color photos and just a lot of good information. And that's a free download if you don't have the book. Okay, next. Okay, what I've got here, a situation where the corn was planted like really late. I like to get my corn in by no later than the 25th of May, but late May, 31st is okay. This was actually planted June 4th. Fortunately, I was able to get some seed, 95-day variety, which is pretty short day for where I'm at. Usually we go 102 to 104 in my area. But that's it's a variety. I believe it's Blue River or Viking, Albert Lee now. 84, 95, 95 day. And I think that went right about 200 bushel an acre. Maybe I'll say 190 on that one. I'm in 36-inch rows. Again, I was panicking because it was getting late. But usually what happens when we get these really wet spells in the spring is that once the rain shut off, where I'm at, usually by the end of May, maybe the first week of June, then we've got our long days, maximum sunshine, dry weather, and things just really pop. And so I've learned that I'm okay planting the first week of June. I've planted as late as June 8th and still had a good yield. But I probably wouldn't go after June 8th with corn, where I'm at. Of course, that's going to vary and be different where you guys are at. Okay, next. Similar situation. These are soybeans planted as late as June 30th. I was going to go to July 4th. So I made that cutoff date. This is a poor part of the farm where I've got some timber soil, not as productive, but they still did 40 bushel and 36-inch rows. And so again, when you plant late, you're going to get less yield typically, although maybe not, depends upon your weed pressure. But again, you're going to have less weeds typically if you plant later. Okay, next. Okay, I've got a few text slides here. How am I doing on time? What slide number is this, Grace? I don't know if you've got it there.
I don't have it in front of me right now. I think you're okay on time.
Okay. Okay. Crop diversification, increasing crop diversity and rotation helps suppress weeds by varying the timing and types of management options throughout the growing season. So as you know, with organics, we need to have at least a 3-crop rotation, which kind of helps that anyway with diversification versus just corn and beans only. So we're already kind of into that system where we kind of have to. But my point here is that maybe we can add some more crops to your system uh, just to help with the weed pressure and so forth. Okay, next. Diverse crop and management practices place multiple stresses on weed species, making it too difficult for any one species to get too comfortable. Next. A diverse crop rotation is one of the most powerful tools that a farmer has for controlling weeds and maintaining fertility. Sometimes that is overlooked, but it's really important. Okay, next. Okay, Eldon from Michigan here. Crop rotation is huge for him. Next. Okay, the key to a good rotation is to have a diversity of crops, crops that are from different plant groups, are seeded at different times, and have different nutrient demands. Okay, next. Okay, here's a chart here. This will take a little more time. This is actually from a Michigan State Extension Bulletin, which I'll talk about later. On the left here, you see your conventional 2-year corn bean rotation. You see closure by canopy is pretty much almost virtually the same every year. Corn's a little longer because of the growing season, but you've got tillage passes and herbicide treatments, and then at the end of the year, you've got some deep ripping or chisel plowing. Okay, so we move over to the right. 4-year organic rotation. I won't talk about year 4 because I imagine most we don't have hay or some kind of forage in your rotation. If you do, that's much, much better. We need to get back, in my opinion, to livestock on the farms and having hay in your rotation. But that's kind of not reality, at least where I'm at. And for the most part, that's not reality. So we look at year 1, we see all those tillage passes. Yeah, there's 2 or 3 passes there working up the ground before planting. We've got maybe 2 rotary hoeings for tine weeding. Then we've got row crop cultivating. And then after crop is harvested, we've got a tillage pass with a chisel plow probably. Year 2 of soybeans, again, very, very similar, just a little shorter window there. Okay, now we go to year 3. We've got a crop that's totally different. We got a crop that's being planted very early in the spring, as early as possible. And then we've got a cover crop typically with that oats, or we're going to put a cover crop in after the oats or winter wheat or spring wheat, actually. But you see how that closure, that canopy there is totally different. And that's what we need at times to help break up the weed cycle by doing that, by having another third crop, a non-row crop in your rotation. Okay, next slide. Okay, maximize the soil coverage in your rotation. We want to keep the ground as covered as much as possible, as I mentioned in the previous slide for weed growth. to minimize the weed growth. Okay, next. Situation here where I had some soft red winter wheat that was planted in the fall. And what happened was it was so wet, and that particular field is really wet. It's got timber soil and clay, and it just takes a while to dry out. And so I went in there on May 4th. The wheat was about 5 inches tall, and I used my grain drill this time to seed. I've got other ways. I've done aerial seeding as well too. I've done 3-point seeding, but in this case, I used my grain drill, and I was concerned about the height of the wheat, but everything was just fine, and it was planted as late as May 4th. Next slide. Okay, that's the same field, same situation there, but it's just a close up of the red clover. I like to plant about 10 to 12 pounds an acre. If you're starting out at it, you may want to go about 15 pounds, but once you feel comfortable, I would go at least 10 pounds an acre. Maybe 12 is a good number to start at. Make sure you've got a lot of red clover there, and you're going to notice that you'll get some boxtail coming in and maybe some other weeds, but not too many with a canopy like that with the red clover. You're going to minimize a lot of weeds. Okay, next slide. Okay, so we're talking about techniques now in the rotation to help control weeds. Slow growing crops like soybeans, for instance, they're most susceptible to weed invasion, should follow weed suppressing crop. So for instance, if you've got a cover crop of rye, which can get in all the way till Thanksgiving, probably in Missouri, maybe even as late as mid-December. If you want to plant rye, that's got its issues, but it does have a strong allelopathic effect. And so soybeans is a good crop to use as the cover crop before soybeans. It'll really help with the weed control. Okay, next slide. Okay, so we can alternate between warm and cool season crops. Let's say, for instance, year one, we want to eradicate late germinating weeds, like weeds that would show up like pigweed, lamb's quarters, uh, velvet weed, so on and so forth. You plant a small grain crop, oats or wheat, they'll get a jump start way ahead of the other types of weeds and shouldn't have too much of an issue with those weeds in an early planted crop or late fall plant crop. So year two, we go to a crop like corn or soybeans. Let's plant it later. Weeds like pennycress or those types of weeds will be like shepherd's purse, for instance. They'll come on. There's the one I talked about earlier, the winter annual. They'll come on early, and you wipe those out by planting the crop like corn and soybeans. So we want to. What's really important, the key point here is to alternate between grass and legume crops. That's just pretty standard knowledge. I think probably all of you know, but just in case you don't or not sure about it, for instance, you'll see the example there, oats or wheat is the cash crop. That's a grass crop. Red clover is the cover crop, but it's still a legume. And then followed by corn, a grass crop, a legume, soybeans. Okay, next. Okay, so you want to avoid planting a light feeder crop. That would be like oats. Very little flax is grown unless you're out in North Dakota. I grow a lot of buckwheat or have over the years. You really don't want to put manure out there or compost before a crop like that. They're light feeders, and weeds we know are opportunists. The manure or compost is much better applied late summer, whether that is after small grain harvest on top of the red clover that may be already there, or it's also popular where I'm at. A lot of guys will till the ground and then they'll plant a cover crop mix. They may go like Joel Groover at Western Illinois. He may go with a 12-way mix or something like that. Some people do. There's a lot of merits to that. Other farmers might only limit it to 3 or 4 different cover crops. But what's neat about that is you can get that manure out there. You can work it in. You can plant your cover crop. And if you go with a cover crop mix, like maybe oats, buckwheat, field peas, those types, oilseed radish is another big one. All those are going to winter kill. Well, maybe I shouldn't say that in southern Missouri. I don't know. So Maybe I'm wrong on that one, but anyway, up my way, uh, all those crops are going to winter kill. What's nice about that is that manure will be there to not only help the crops grow, like your peas, for instance, but it'll be there to bring out more weeds. But those weeds are never going to get to maturity, or probably not, and that's just one less weed you're going to have. Okay, next slide. Example of that, like I mentioned, there's a cover crop plant. Something that was planted around late July, uh, mid-August. You see the oilseed radish, the oats, and the buckwheat. Next. Okay, we talk about establishing a false seed bed, also known as a stale seed bed. And so the objective here is to plant a seed bed without stimulating another flush of weed emergence. So what you want to do, if possible, and it may not be possible, this is just an idea. You may want to get that seed bed worked up, maybe a couple of passes to the point where you've got it in pretty good shape. One more light tillage pass, a shallow tillage pass is all you need. That pass is going to happen right immediately, if possible, in front of your planter. And that way you're not waking up these weeds that are woken up by the sunlight, especially at that time of year. So that's just something that's talked about. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of that approach. If it doesn't work, it's not a big deal, but it's just something you may have heard about. Okay, next. Okay, we want to keep weeds on the defensive here. Remember, they'll they want heat and light, and they get that, they'll germinate. And if you wake them up, you got to have a way to take them out. So again, with residue management, that's a big issue. Do you have the equipment you need to take out those weeds? And I think about even a cover crop or rye. Sometimes that can get away pretty easily with a wet spell, a warm spell. Uh, I would say if you got a moldboard plow that you like, don't sell it because you may need to use it. Or another way to get rid of that cover crop or the weeds. Okay, next. A crop of buckwheat. I just wanted to show a picture. Got a nice monarch butterfly there. I like growing buckwheat, either a cover crop or cash crop. I've done both. Okay, next. That's a few of buckwheat I had many years ago. That's my older combine, a Massey 510. You can see the crop of buckwheat there. Just a beautiful crop. There's a lot of good, and I was able to get a little profit off that too. Okay, next slide. Okay, that is the same field, and you have to take my word on this one. You see the nice soil there? I would say about 2 years before that, before the buckwheat, or 2 years before the soybean crop, before the buckwheat was growing, that was not the same color or the same tilth. The fact that I had buckwheat out there in the previous slide, you see some volunteer there in the soybeans, but not too bad. That made a world of difference with the weed control and with the soil tilth in that field. So again, you're going to have a volunteer issue with your buckwheat, and that can be a problem. So I'm not going to say it's not a problem, but I use my grain cleaner to get the weed seeds out, and it was never has been a problem for me. It'll draw in a lot of beneficial insects as well too. Okay, next. Okay, this is another picture out of the Michigan State Extension Bulletin, Jimson weed. We've got a little bit of that around here. This year, not too bad, but it's here. And remember that with your weed seeds, there's actually a product you can buy known as tetrazolium dye. And if anyone's interested, I can look that up for you. I know the company has changed names. I think it was Fisher Scientific. It's something else now, but you can actually get this product. You can put a drop or two in your weed seeds to see when that weed seed becomes viable. Again, I can look into that, but cutting or pulling a weed with seed that you may think is not viable because it doesn't look like it's viable. It may not be hard seed. That weed is probably going to grow for some time. You've got a corn or soybean canopy there that is moist and wet, and you've got moisture there, and so it'll probably continue to grow for some time before it's totally killed. Okay, next slide. Yeah, we use the soybean weeding hooks. to cut out the weeds. Sometimes we'll pull, but you'll see the sharp edge on that hook. Okay, next. Okay, same hook, just edge on the bottom of the hook that you can use to reach over to get some weeds. Okay, next. Okay, if you got a really weedy field or problem areas in the field, that's always been a problem, you may want to deviate from your current rotation. You know, maybe you've got corn, soybeans, and small grain. Maybe that's not working. You might want to try buckwheat or something different instead of fighting the same problem every year. Okay, next slide. Okay, we talk about cover crops, how good they are, but they can also be a real problem. Some cover crops are going to show up next year in your crop, especially if you got like maybe oats or wheat. Like I said before, buckwheat can be a problem. And last but not least, hairy vetch is a real problem for a cover crop, even though it'll produce mega amounts of nitrogen, usually maybe up to 200 pounds per acre of nitrogen. That can be a problem if selling food grade grains such as oats or wheat with the timing. So again, reach out to me if you want to. It's a great crop. Doug Alert, Margaret Smith's husband out of Iowa, Margaret's with Albert Lee seed. He puts that in his rotation. He said he has good luck with it, but again, you have to probably change your rotation maybe to make that work. Okay, next. Okay, you know what? I see it's 152.
Yeah,
Uh, I'm
does
not going to get this. I might let the Canada Thistle part go unless you want to go longer.
does anybody at this point have any questions that they want to jump in and ask? Nope. We can go a little bit longer if you're okay with that.
Yeah, I think I can cover this section here. Weed seed predation. Okay, next slide. I've got an example here to emphasize that point. Is the question is, do I chisel plow that field in the fall? It means burying some weed seeds, or do I wait in the spring and do some combination, maybe shredding with the flail shredder or shallower tillage before planting soybeans? Remember that mice are out there during the wintertime eating weed seeds. And the next slide, please, that'll show that point. You see that's foxtail there, and there's some mouse eating weed seeds. And so if you're going to till that in, you're not going to get as much rodent activity, where it's amazing how much a mouse or a rodent can eat with even under the snow. They'll eat those weed seeds. Okay, next. Okay, let's just pass through this one here. I got a couple more that are not as important because of time. Uh, okay, let's pass me on that one too. Okay, I want to highlight this. This is a new SARA publication, new meaning probably by now, maybe 3 or 4 years old. Managing Weeds on Your Farm, a Guide to Ecological Strategies. Chuck Muller, who I believe is deceased, was one of the authors of this publication. It's a really good book, and I thought I should mention that. Okay, next slide. And I had mentioned before those two weed management bulletins from Michigan State. They're probably about at least 15, maybe 20 years old now. You won't get bored looking at these books. As I mentioned here, color pictures, glossy pages, just really, really good information. I think these are probably some of the best publications, if not the best that I've got. Okay, next slide. Okay, this was back before the chemical era, just slightly before, back in the late 30s. Mr. Leedy talks about crop rotation is the most effective means yet devised for keeping land clear of weeds. No other method of weed control, mechanical, chemical, or biological, is so economical or so easily practiced as a well-arranged sequence of tillage and cropping. So that was before the chemical area, just slightly before it started up. But this is a quote from someone with USDA. Next slide. Okay, we've already talked about this, about the benefits of crop rotation. What the research bears out is that once the rotation is longer, you're going to have less issues with weed disease and insect pest problems. Okay, next. Yeah, I've got 2 pages here for references, and I guess we'll have to let the thistle go, right, Grace?
I think we'll let the thistle go this time.
Yeah. I mean, I can always do that another time. It'll be a shorter one, obviously. Well, actually, quackgrass could be thrown in that too. It's a perennial weed, so okay.
Yeah, absolutely. For those on, what are the biggest struggle weeds you guys have that you're dealing with on your farms? You guys can feel free to drop messages, questions, answers in the chat or unmute yourselves, either way. Nick says, even if not today, I would like to learn more about managing Canada thistle. It's a big issue around his area.
Yeah, that's in fact, even conventional farmers in their roadside ditches, which don't get sprayed, are having in the last year or so have had an increase in Canada thistle issues.
Field bindweed.
Yeah, field bindweed also, I mean, there's different types. Morning glory is one. Morning glory has the white blossom. There's also the purple blossom, and I'm not a weed expert, so I don't know all of them, but field bindweed is something that, yeah, it's going to be more of a problem up in my area as well, too. As far as a quick answer, I don't have a quick answer, but I can certainly probably get back to you on that one and maybe give you some ideas. But I will admit, field bindweed is it's a real issue.
It's taking over my yard at the moment, so I think I'm gonna get some goats.
No, the goats would probably do it.
All right. Anyone have any other questions? Any concerns? All
Yeah, I
right.
apologize for not getting into the thistle, but I didn't want to limit. I threw some slides out. I mean, I make changes every time I do a presentation, and I knew to get into thistle management, it was probably going to be more than what we had time for. But I kind of put it in there with the idea that if we have more time, which I didn't think we would, I could talk about it. Otherwise, maybe another time or whatever. I'm willing to talk about it. I work for Rodale Institute part time as a consultant, and so yeah, I guess whatever works out.
Perfect. Well, I want to thank you for taking time and going over all of the methods you did with us.